This is All India Radio. In the program Insight, now we bring a discussion on production-linked incentive scheme for Atma Nirbhar Bharat. The participants are Siddharth, Economic Analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR Correspondent.
In today's program, we will discuss about how the central government has cleared schemes to boost semiconductor production and solar energy generation. And towards this, the center decided to also provide fiscal support, 50% of the project cost for setting up semiconductor fabs or fabrication plants. Along with that, the center also has a very ambitious program of setting up 65,000 megawatt per annum manufacturing capacity for solar energy, which is seen as a substitute for oil-based conventional energy imports into our country. How important these two schemes are to boost production for both semiconductors and solar energy.
If we can just go back a little, 2020 when the COVID pandemic happened, and this whole process of production-linked incentives was conceived around that time, given the dependence for certain products on China, especially when it came to things like pharmaceutical ingredients and electronics. These were items where the supply chain was disrupted and there was over-reliance on imports from a particular country. So the government thought of the first set of production-linked incentive schemes, which was for drug intermediaries and pharmaceutical ingredients, as well as for large-scale electronic manufacturing and medical devices. And subsequently, as part of the Atma Nirbhar Bharat push that was announced by the Prime Minister, the scope was expanded to include other sectors such as solar equipment, automobiles and auto components, textiles, specialty steel, and those kind of products, with drones also getting added to it. So all in all, the government has so far announced PLI schemes for 14 sectors with an outlay of 1.97 lakh crore. And the expectation is that, this will result in large-scale employment generation, say about 60 lakh new jobs during the next 5 years. And given this overall background, there were two important decisions by the Union Cabinet yesterday. One was regarding the whole semiconductor and display manufacturing ecosystem, where the incentive under the 76,000 crore scheme, which is around $10 billion, was made uniform for all types of semiconductors at 50%. There were certain segments where the incentive was limited 30%. Now it has been expanded to cover all the segments where 50% incentive will be given. Apart from that, the other decision was on the solar system, basically around the modules. And the idea is to get companies, both domestic and overseas, into the ecosystem with an outlay of about 19,500 crores. And really scale up the capacity, which was around 18 gigawatts or so manufacturing capacity, basically 3 gigawatt for solar cells and 15 gigawatt for modules. And now this capacity is proposed to be enhanced by creating additional domestic solar equipment manufacturing capability of 25 gigawatts for solar cells and modules, and 10 gigawatt for wafers. So these are two schemes that were cleared by the cabinet yesterday.
So this cabinet meeting chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has two challenges. One is the technology side and the other is providing financial aid and support. So when we talk about the financial side of it, when you have fiscal support of 50% or 30% support in select items that are manufactured under this PLI scheme, what kind of financial aid and support is it under? What is the type of package of securities or the loan agreement that is being provided by the state?
The idea is to provide incentive on incremental production. So this is production-linked incentive. So you bid out these contracts, and people who invest a certain amount and keep adding to the production according to the targets laid down for 5 years, they would be eligible for these benefits. So as we discussed, in case of the semiconductor segment, the package is about 76,000 crores, and the government is hoping that they will be able to get investments of around, leverage it to get investments of almost 2 lakh crores. There has been a lot of interest in this space, given that there is a rush for getting chip manufacturing facilities and chip packaging facilities globally. So India is competing with the US and Europe to attract investments. As you would know, the US has offered incentives of over $50 billion. And similarly, European Union has similar incentives. China gives massive subsidies to chip manufacturers, estimated about 15 odd billion. But given the whole demand for chips in everything from your mobile phones to your automobiles, defense equipment, laptops, computers, everything, and given that devices are becoming much more intelligent and the whole rise of artificial intelligence and things like that, there is a massive rush from companies as well to invest. Samsung alone is looking to invest about 200 billion in chip manufacturing factories globally. There is TSMC and the others. As you're aware, there is interest and there is an intent to set up a manufacturing facility already in India, in Gujarat, through this venture between Foxconn and Vedanta. So there is a lot of interest, and the government is hoping that India is a large market. It would be able to attract investment, about $10 billion of incentives that it is offering through PLI.
Well, that's very interesting because if you take the example of the US market, Texas state and Arizona have been very competitive with the other states within the Union of the United States of America to invite investment. What are the states in India doing? Because when you set up a fab unit for semiconductors, fabrication plant, they are citing the cost at $10 billion capital expenditure for that kind of an establishment. What about the technical side to it? Because these chips are measured in terms of nanometers. So the lower the nanometer, the more competitive and advanced the product is to this PLI scheme. How do you see this challenge also being overcome under the announcement by the government?
At the moment, the government is not insisting on what kind of chips you manufacture here. As you would realize, the industry is evolving in India. We don't really have a manufacturing base in India at the moment. So what we are looking at is to first get investors. And it's a very, very competitive industry where even a global giant like Intel has not yet beaten the 10 nanometer barrier, while TSMC, which is the semiconductor manufacturing company in Taiwan, and Samsung produce about chips which are 3 nanometers. And China is also just broken through about 7 nanometers. And IBM has announced plans for a 2 nanometer technology. So what we are probably going to get is the 2 nanometer or something, but it will be a beginning. And as the market develops, you would see better quality chips and products come out in the years ahead. I mean, it's just like mobile phones, where you initially started with feature phones and then you move to smartphones, and now you have iPhones coming in and the latest version of iPhones being manufactured in India. So it's part of an evolution process where you start at a lower level in the manufacturing chain and then you scale up.
So when it comes to chip making, we still have some way to go, and certainly the centers providing all the fiscal stimulus and support to ensure that manufacturing base is created.
We're just about starting on this whole manufacturing thing, so we have a long way to go. I mean, there's only one intent at the moment for manufacturing in India. So there's a long way ahead for us, especially given that the entire landscape has become so competitive with every country seeking investments in this space, trying to reduce reliance on imports.
Well, speaking of reducing reliance on imports, you cited the case of the COVID pandemic, where because of China's geopolitical reach and China was unable to export, our production had come down. Now we're looking to become self-reliant. We already have a base as compared to chip making. We have a base in photovoltaic production. How do you see this scheme ensuring that the solar cell manufacturing actually picks up so that our megawatt capacity actually goes up, because the target is 65,000 megawatts per annum manufacturing capacity?
We have massive ambitions on the renewable energy side. And what is happening is that given the way our requirement is increasing, domestic production is still very low. And we obviously need to scale up the domestic manufacturing of equipment to scale up our production and reduce the reliance on imports. So that is the objective, which number of steps have been announced. Initially there was a 4,500 crore scheme, which was then ramped up through additional allocation of 19,500 through the PLI scheme. And the government had also, to ensure that manufacturing comes to India, imposed additional customs duty on solar modules as well as solar cells. Since April, that is effective. Plus, there are manufacturing zones that are planned. So there is, again, like in the case of semiconductors, there is a big push which is envisaged for the renewable energy equipment as well. So if you look at the total manufacturing capacity that is envisaged, it is estimated at about 65,000 megawatt per annum. and investment of close to 1 lakh crore so that we have large manufacturing capacity. And the target is for import substitution of close to 1.4 lakh crore. So the idea again is to get manufacturing to domestic shores and reduce the import dependence going forward. The challenge is here that the technology, like in case of semiconductors, is continuously evolving, and how you keep pace with that evolving technology is also going to be a challenge going forward.
So a typical special economic zone provides tax holidays, it provides land to these investors, especially in the chip making and also for solar cell and module production. Could you tell us something about the nature of these SEZ zones which are being set up in the competitive states inviting investments?
The SEZ policy has undergone a change over the years. So a lot of those tax concessions have gone away, but states are themselves in a very, very competitive race for to get investment and become large investment destination among themselves, whether it's states in north, south, west, east, everyone is vying for investment. And the idea is to get investments based on incentives that you offer. And going forward, that is what the idea is. The MNRE had earlier sought certain concessions, and some of the level playing field related issues such as import duty had been sorted out. But there are various other incentives that states will come up with, whether it is through land, whether it is through other concessions and things like that.
So these solar photovoltaic manufacturers, who are their clients? Is the state their client? Because when you look at chip making, they have multiple clients because of the devices that are sold through the private sector. Who is the client for the solar PV manufacturers, and how are they going to be selected?
Again, under the PLI scheme, it is through a process of bidding that the entire process works. Their clients would be companies who set up these renewable energy parks and renewable energy capacities. Some of the power generators themselves would also get into manufacturing. Some of them are working on battery technology also, so that there is round-the-clock activity in the renewable energy space. So there are multiple players in this business who are into renewable energy. There are new players coming in, and that whole client base is going to go up in the years ahead. If you look at the whole plan that we have in India, there is a large capacity rollout which is planned. And as we reduce dependence on this whole carbon-based, coal-based energy, we are increasingly going towards renewable energy, especially on an incremental basis.
So when is a likely rollout going to start for both these schemes, for fab units and for solar energy cells and module units?
Now that the scheme has been cleared, the ministries have been at preparing the scheme, etc., consulting stakeholders on how it should be designed. So I think the bids, etc., will be called very soon.
So what's your take as far as the importance of the scheme is concerned for the economy when you look at the import substitution being in rupees, where you'll be self-reliant and not have to spend your valuable foreign exchange reserves, the generation of employment? What's the economic value addition to the economy under these two schemes?
Well, as far as the PLI scheme for PV modules is concerned, as far as the solar PV scheme is concerned, the direct employment is going to be around 2 lakh, whereas there would be a large indirect employment. Similarly, there is likely to be an import substitution of close to 1.4 lakh according to the government data. And there is direct investment of about 94,000 crore that the government is estimating. In case of the whole semiconductor thing, the numbers haven't really been spelled out so much in detail, but the total investment that they're looking at is around 2 lakh crore based on incentives of 76,000 crore. So that is the kind of scale that they're looking at.
Well, Mr. Siddharth, and thank you so much for being with us on how the Center has cleared schemes to boost semiconductor production and manufacturing in India, and also providing fiscal support of 50% of the project cost for setting up these fab units.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on production-linked incentive scheme for Atma Nirbhar Bharat. The participants were Siddharth, Economic Analyst, and Arjun J. Chaudhary, AIR Correspondent. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on a mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel, News on AIR Official. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.